Welcome to Everything Else with Jonathan Pritchett. And today we have Dr. Leighton Flowers to interview to dig a little bit deeper into his life. Most people know him as now former director of evangelism, Texas Baptist, current professor of theology and leadership here at Trinity College of the Bible Theological Seminary, and also the host of Soteriology 101, for which you are probably most famous for, the one string banjo. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Jonathan, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're just trying something different here because people think of, especially in your case, a one-string banjo that you do nothing but think about Calvinism 24/7.
Yeah, all day long. I'm just there plucking this little guy right here. Yes,
Right.
absolutely. Yes.
The gift you tried to give away that nobody took. So we won't talk about that. But I've known you for years now, and I consider you one of my closest friends because I don't have very many, so I count all. So if you are a friend, you're close because few of you. So I know that there's more to Leighton Flowers than just Calvinism, but I don't think a lot of people know. And so one of the things that you say on Soteriology 101 is that you to do that as, or at least you started that more as a hobby. And
Sure.
other people are into sports and all of this other stuff, but this is your hobby. You don't watch Sports Center or whatever.
Right.
Now, I find that curious because I know that you were a football player.
Yeah, I played football in high school all throughout my life. Ever since I was 5 years old, I played football. My older brother Hayden, my oldest brother, played football, and he was a big football guy. He even went to Princeton on a scholarship and played with Jason Garrett, the former coach of the Dallas Cowboys, as many people know. And he was very successful. He's coached football throughout his life as well, here and there. We actually coached a team together, 6-man football for his son's football team. I was a defensive coordinator and he was the offensive coordinator, and we had a great time during that season of our life when his children were younger, and we live there in Wiley, Texas together. And so, yeah, football has been a big part of my life. I still watch the Dallas Cowboys religiously, and usually disappointed, at least during the playoffs. I'm disappointed. Yeah. And I remember the glory days of, the Troy Aikman years of the mid 90s. But I also have a vague memory of, the Staubach, era back when my dad was really watching and I was just a little kid.
Yeah, me too. So, Too Tall Jones, all those
guys. Dorset was, I love Tony Dorsett. Yeah, I love those guys. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
that shows our age.
Right, we're really old now. Yeah, but I remember because my dad was a Cowboys fan. If you're from Arkansas, that's like the Arkansas team because of Jerry Jones and all of that,
Right.
Ripping us off on energy prices for all those years helped him be able to afford the Cowboys. So
yeah,
that's kind of how that happened. So I'm not actually a Cowboys fan myself, but I find it interesting though. How does a football jock in high school, not as good as his brother because you didn't get the scholarship?
No, I did not. No, not near as good as Hayden was. No,
right.
I was not.
But how do you go from high school football jock? You wore the Letterman jacket and all that, right?
Yeah.
To theology nerd. That there's got to be a story there. How does that happen?
I just always had a very great interest in the Bible, and just my dad was, of course, a youth pastor of the church I was when I was growing up, and my mom was the school nurse, so they have me covered both at church and at school, and both of them very godly parents, and just always enjoyed learning the Bible, learning a Bible study. I remember getting with some of my buddies, they would come over and do sleepovers, and instead of doing all the goofy stuff, we'd all get together with our Bibles and pinning stuff out. And, I was like, 14 or 13 or whatever, and doing deep Bible studies with my buddies,
Yeah.
And it's just something I always enjoyed. I always enjoyed talking about theology and about God and learning different things. But at the same time, I was, I ran track. I played. They taught me into playing basketball. I was a tall guy. I'm 6'4", and I was my height in my freshman year in high school. I reached my height at that age, and so all the coaches in my 3A high school there in Wiley, they were trying to recruit me to come play basketball too, because I'm tall, and I'm like, I don't know how to dribble. I can't do anything.
Tall or can't be coordinated, right?
Right. No, I mean, and I wasn't, too much of an oaf, but at the same time, I just didn't know how to play basketball because I hadn't grown up playing basketball like some of the other guys did, and so I could barely dribble. But so I remember the first day after they had finally, because the same coaches that coach football, coach basketball in the small, 3A high school. And so they're just always, Flowers, you got to play. Flowers, you got to play. You just rebound the ball and pass it to somebody who can dribble, just kind of like that. And so I finally showed up and we were doing the drills, where you dribble the ball and do a layup, dribble the ball, do a layup.
Yeah.
And I would dribble off my foot, or I just was embarrassed, hit the bottom of the rim or whatever else. And so I finally just looked at my coach. I said, well, can I just dunk it? That way I don't have to miss it. And he goes, well, can you? And I said, I don't know. I've never tried. And so he said, well, yeah, try it. And so I just grabbed the ball and my hands were big enough I could just palm it. And so I just ran up and just dunked it. And all the guys just went nuts. Like it was just crazy. Wow. And I didn't even know it was that big of a deal. And I was like, oh, so that's what I became, so they stopped making fun of me because I could dunk it, because I was the only one on that little team of a bunch of white boys that could actually dunk. But
yeah, I was going to ask, well, if you can dunk in a high school game, everyone loves it, because you don't see, people don't normally dunk in high school basketball games. And so I went to a high school that had a really great basketball team, and we had a couple of players who could dunk. So I wanted to ask, can you still dunk?
Oh, no. Well, I haven't tried in years, so I wouldn't. I'm quite certain I could not dunk right now. Maybe a tennis ball if I lost my 30, 40 pounds that I need to lose again.
Yeah.
So yeah, but no, I don't have the ability to put this weight up in the air. I was much lighter in my high school days.
Oh yeah. So what did you play in football? What position?
I was a linebacker and tight end.
Okay.
So played both ways.
Which did you like? Did you like tight end better, or did you like knocking people?
No, I loved linebacker. I loved hitting. That was my favorite thing. And so that's what I got all district in, I think my sophomore year or something like that. It was the linebacker stuff. And so that was my favorite. And I always did better when I had a good defensive end in front of me. My friend Chad, who by the way became my roommate in college. And he was one of the few guys that was one of my close friends in college that I could not convince to become a Calvinist when I became a Calvinist, by the way. And that's Chad. And he was my defensive end the year that I got all district. And I credit Chad for that, because he was such an awesome defensive end, and he made me look good. So when he left, I got worse. So because I didn't have as good of a defensive end after he graduated. So
and you couldn't win him over to Calvinism.
I couldn't. No, and he never had a good reason why he wasn't a Calvinist. He just wasn't. He just is always like, Flowers. I can't go there. That's just it's just not what I read in the Bible. And I would show him all these verses, and he would say, no, that's not what it means.
This is where people would deny this part of your autobiography. They would say, you were never a Calvinist. You were never.
Talk to Chad. Talk to Chad Womack. He's a pastor up in Fairview. You can ask him. So.
Yeah. Well, he knew better.
Chad still texts me and say, I told you so. He still rides.
Yeah, he should demand royalties to say, you're just ripping my theology off now.
Exactly. Yeah.
You couldn't win him over. So growing up with Dad, see you at the pole guy, kind of probably legendary in Baptist circles in Texas, and then here you are. Now was he a Calvinist?
No, neither of my parents ever adopted Calvinism. My oldest brother Hayden, that I mentioned earlier, I've got two older brothers, Ward and Hayden. And I think Ward had become a Calvinist too, but just wasn't near as vocal about it. But Hayden and I and his family, he was married with kids when I was in college, and so he was a part of Wiley First Baptist Church back at home, and he was actively involved in that church. And one of the Sunday school classes began to teach Calvinism, the head of that class, and my brother was a part of that class. And so he was a Calvinist, and I had become a Calvinist while I was at Hardin Simmons in Abilene. And so I came back and was going to intern there at First Baptist, and kind of talking to my brother about all this stuff, and we were all on the same page as being Calvinists. And the church ended up splitting over that. And so that pretty much that entire adult Sunday school class, which was quite sizable and wealthy, because there was some big donors in that class, they ended up pulling out of the church, which devastated the pastor there. Al Draper was the pastor there. I've since, by the way, written him a letter of apology, and have seen him several times over the years since then. His son Derek actually played football for Wiley High School too, a few years ahead of me, and so there's some connections there And so it really split apart the church. And my parents were going to that church and were not Calvinists, but didn't want to be involved in the split and everything else. And you can imagine the torment they were going through, watching their two sons and the family and their grandchildren.
Yeah, you're to
kind of
blame for
split.
that.
Yeah, we were splitting off their home church, and so they graciously they handled it the best way parents could handle that kind of a situation. They ended up just kind of moving off to another church that my dad was a friend of the pastor, Steve Stroop, over at Lake Point. With the Metroplex, you've got so many options,
Right.
and so my mom and dad, and he was a part of Texas Baptist at the time. He was the youth evangelism director, and so they just kind of moved over to Lake Point to kind of stay out of the mess. But I had a lot of long time conversations, and even wrote a really long letter, typed up a really long letter that I sent to my parents, trying to convince them to adopt Calvinism. I wish I could still find that letter. I don't know whatever happened to it, but
They burned it.
yeah, probably. But my parents were very gracious about our theological journey, and as far as I know, Hayden's family is still Calvinistic, leans Calvinistically.
Yeah.
Their son Lawson's in the ministry, and I think he serves in a more Calvinistic type church, and we get along really well. We talk about these things occasionally and kind of spar with each other about certain things, but it's in a very loving, kind way, and it's never been an issue that split our family in any way.
Yeah. So, is your dad still with us, or has he?
Yeah. Mom and dad are still.
Is he both your parents?
Yeah, they're in their upper 70s, and matter of fact, tomorrow I'm flying to see them. They actually live here close, but they're visiting Hayden up in Angel Fire. He's got a kind of a cabin up there. He's from Houston, and so the Houston heat. He goes up to Angel Fire to get away from the heat, and so they're up there staying a couple of weeks, and so they asked me to come and join them for a while. So I'm going to go check them, see them on my way to a speaking engagement up in that area.
Yeah, that'll be good. You and your dad still talk theology and all of that, or?
My dad's never been a real theology geek like me. He listens, and he's always always a good dad to listen and to give feedback here and there. But for the most part, he's not. He's more of a practitioner.
Yeah.
You think of guys like Rick Warren, kind of a guy that's getting things done, organizing things, and making structures
instead of us.
Do what?
I said useful to Jesus.
Yes, exactly. Yes, he was always the practitioner, the planner, getting things done. That's one of the reasons I think he was successful in starting See at the Pole, was his ability to organize and to structure things and to plan events. He was always really good at that.
Yeah, I loved See as a Pole when I was in high school, because I went to kind of one of those liberal arts type high schools, right? And so Christianity wasn't exactly. It was like an arts and science magnet type school, and Christianity wasn't really the most popular thing to hold at that kind of place, in the city, Little Rock. And so I got pumped up because that was like our chance to be public and outspoken about our faith within the rules and stuff. And so, and we'd go and they'd have donuts and all kinds of stuff. But I always remember what it was like being engaged in like public prayer and kind of what back then you would consider that the hostile war zone, behind enemy lines kind of thing. And it always had that feel to it that I thought, man, this is because they technically couldn't do anything because it wasn't during school hours, and they couldn't stop you because the public school is public property. So there was constitutional things where it intersected that weird spot that you can do it before school, but not during school hours. And only students could be there. It's really interesting thing, but they allowed some of the parents. And so, I remember the 3 years of high school, I went every year just because I thought it was important. And I wasn't even that big into Christianity at that point. I didn't even get saved till 17, but I always, I probably thought of myself, just from my family, nominal Christianity. I always thought that was my team. Even if I don't hang out with them any other time other than See You at the Pole, I still always felt that need to show up and be there for my team. And, one of the things that I miss, because we both work for Trinity Seminary, we're always around seminarians. You got 3 degrees, so you've always been in seminary. You were in seminary, up until what, 2000? 15, 16, somewhere in there.
Well, yeah, I went to Hardin Simmons and got my
Yeah.
theology degree there. I majored in theology there, and then I went on straight from there to Southwestern there
Got
in
your
Fort
MDiv.
Worth,
Yeah.
and got my MDiv, and then I did ministry for quite a few years and went back around 2015, 2014, 15, and I think I graduated 2016 with my doctorate from New Orleans,
Right.
and so yeah,
So you've been in
lot
and
of
out of the
schooling.
seminary community, but it's when you get around like secular campuses and stuff like that, that's where you see that that kind of ministry, I guess, with what you did in Texas Baptist with evangelism. You see that's really the places that need more Christian presence there, and I've seen these crew and these things come and go, Baptist
Mhm.
Fellowship. What was the Baptist one? Baptist Fellowship, something of students or
Yeah, Baptist student
Baptist. Yeah.
BSU was what it's called, and it's called BSM now, Baptist Student Ministries. But BSU was founded in and started from Texas Baptist, and so where I worked, and so that's one of the biggest uh, sections of Texas Baptist is the BSM.
Yeah, it just seems like those. I remember because I was a college student in my 30s. I was a barber before then, and so when I went to go check out those groups, and this would have been in the mid 2000s, and it just you see those campus or Christian organizations dying out. They all seem to be on their last leg. Even in a place like Conway, Arkansas, where I mean that's one of the there's like more churches per capita than most places in the country, even in Texas. I mean, Conway, Arkansas has tons of churches, and yet the presence on the college campus was it was lacking, and I was sad about that. But
Yeah,
what can you do?
it's in some places it's thriving. It depends on the organization and the leadership in the local areas. My son went to the United States Naval Academy. One of my sons, I got three of them, but Cooper went to the United States Naval Academy, and they had a huge BSM presence there. And he talked about how much. Matter of fact, they came and had me speak at an event that they had at one time, and it's very strong ministry there, and got to see how that impacted my son, who was going through a huge transition by going all the way to Annapolis to from where he was, and I was very, very grateful for their ministry to my son. And so those kinds of ministries sometimes are kind of unsung heroes. A lot of things they're happening in behind the scenes, and people don't even see some of the work they're doing, but it's great work.
Yeah, Naval Academy. That's got to have you beaming with pride. That one.
Yes, yeah. Cooper did a really. He's graduated now, and he's gone to Quantico now to get his officer training, and has graduated as a second lieutenant, and about to start his military career, and with his new bride Tori, and so they're doing really well. Matter of fact, just FaceTime with him day before yesterday for quite some time.
Does he kind of lord that over his two brothers and sister?
No, he's very gracious, but they're also very proud of him. We all are. I mean, anytime someone's serving in the military, and I'm proud of all my children. Of course, they all are thriving and doing really well in their schools. Colson, my oldest, is about to get his master's degree in counseling from Dallas Baptist University, and works with the counseling department there, and is doing an awesome job. And he's got a significant other that looks like could be the one. I think there's sounds of wedding bells in the future, but it hasn't been made official.
You say that and it doesn't work out, then this interview, never let you live that down.
Yeah. Well, it seems very strong. Colson and Stella, and what they're going through right now, I think is a wonderful thing. They seem like a perfect match.
Young love.
Yes. You've got to know the two to know what I'm talking about. But Colson's my nerd, and I say that with great affection, because he loves the Lord of the Rings. Now he was a sports guy too. I mean, he was in sports, but he's really big into Lord of the Rings, and he knows all the trivia about Lord of the Rings, and just he was always the Lego guy with all the Star Wars, Lego Star Wars, and I think you were talking about that the other day. And I was going, man, Colson would love this discussion, because
me
he's
and
really big into
Barbara were talking about, because I grew up playing with those Lego toys, and then I just never grew up out of them. they've gotten so expensive that I can't justify buying the stuff that I want to buy.
Yes.
We need more patrons to give me more disposable income so I can buy toys. Actually,
Well,
but yeah,
I was going to say, Esther is at Hardin Simmons University where I went, and her and Alex, her boyfriend, also are very close, and it could be very close to engagement, but not yet. And so, but they're doing really well, and she's getting her marketing degree, and she's been working at her home church at First Richardson and doing an awesome job with that. And she's a great musician. She's a drummer, and she can play piano and guitar and sing beautifully. And I'm very proud of everything that she's doing as well. She sings occasionally for the praise band there at
yeah. So I was going to ask because I was not ever, obviously, I never played football, not because I didn't love football, it's because I would have never been good at it. I'm 5'8", and back then I weighed $125 and had no coordination whatsoever. So I was a band nerd, but I always enjoyed football. Because my dad played football and my brother played football. My older brother played football. But I was a band nerd. So when I saw you posting pictures of your daughter in the marching band, I was like, yeah, that's pretty cool. And so I wondered, where did this music talent come from in your family? Because I don't even.
Laura, my wife, is musically inclined. She plays the piano and the organ, and she sings well. And then my dad, on my side of the family, my dad is the musician. A lot of people don't know that because he doesn't flaunt it, but he was a music minister. He actually graduated with a music degree, and he can play the piano and sings really, really great. I didn't inherit any of that, unfortunately.
Yeah, obviously. You can't even play the one string very well. So.
I can play the guitar. I know about 4 chords. I did lead worship a couple of times in my college group, but I've quickly learned that's just not my forte. And so I delegated that over to someone else in the college ministry very quickly because that's just not my thing.
Yeah.
But I love music, love praise and worship music, and wished I was good at that kind of thing, but just never.
Yeah,
really
I've heard you hum along to tunes, and your singing voice is about as good as mine, which is to say that no one wants to hear our album.
Yeah, as my son Cooper likes to say, I can't even carry a tune in my head.
Right. Yeah, that's. I love to sing. I know I'm terrible at it. It's like I can make myself laugh at myself in church, along with my wife laughing at me when I sing. I mean, it's bad. It irritates me because Braxton, believe it or not, has got a killer voice.
Really? I don't think I've ever heard him sing.
Yeah, when he wants to do good, he has an amazing voice, in my opinion. I think he missed his calling. He'll tell you he also missed his calling. He should have been Bono, but no, he actually.
Well, of all 4 of my kids, Cooper's the only one that's not musically inclined. The only one I hadn't mentioned is my youngest, Caden, who's still at home. He's a junior in high school, and he also plays the drums and the piano. He also played football for most of his life, and so he's kind of the all-around guy. He's great. He's also really good at dancing, of all things. Like every time they have school dances and everything else, he's the one who wins all the awards for whatever dance thing he's doing. Like they'll have a dance off, and he'll win. And it's funny because all of the African American first at Garland, where he's at, there's a lot of African American students, and they're always just giving him a really hard time because he's beating all of them and dancing and stuff like that. So it's really a fun.
Every now and then,
thing.
a white guy can dance, just not.
It just doesn't happen very. I don't know where he got that because neither Laura or I are coordinated in that way, and so I mean.
But do you dance?
I 2-step. In Abilene, we learned to go to Upland, kind of a place, a little 2-stepping kind of a, line dancing, that kind of Texas dance. Yeah, I'll dance. I'll jump around and move my arms.
This is for Adam. Yeah, this is for you, Adam Coleman, and you, MJ Jackson, because all the black guys I hang out with are the guys who'll stand in the corner and not get on the dance floor. So if Leighton Flowers and Braxton too, but he's not black, unfortunately. He won't dance either. But
we were at my son's wedding, just a few months ago, and I was right out there in the middle dancing. And when I started getting tired, I looked over at Tori's grandfather, who was 82 years old, I think. And he was still dancing out on the floor. And I said, I'm not sitting down if he doesn't sit down. So I kept going. As long as I saw him up dancing.
Yeah, your producer, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name. Caleb.
Mm-hmm.
Forgive me. You should laugh more at my jokes, and I'd remember who you were on Facebook. Yeah, but Caleb, why is he not out there following you around, getting B-roll of this for like your podcast introductions? I mean,
he knows he would get fired if he did that. So
no, come on. Well, you can't fire me, so I am going.
No, I'm sure.
Out.
I know there are pictures because I saw some pictures from the wedding of me out in the dance floor. But I don't know if there's any videos that will surface along the way or not. But I was having a ball. I mean, it was a great wedding. We really had a great time.
Can't dribble, but you can dance. You can line dance. That's great.
That's right.
That's right. All right. So two-step. I guess you can at least do some slow dancing because you're going to have a father-daughter dance coming up in the
waltz, and schottisch and all those fun things I learned back in the day.
So when you're on a road trip, you're not, or you're flying, don't say podcast unless it's Trinity Radio. What are you listening to music wise? What are you listening to if you're not listening to like some stupid Christian YouTuber thing?
And you're right. Most of the time it is a podcast. It's usually not music, but like in the morning, like this morning when I woke up, I listen to just like instrumental, like classical instrumental music because I don't like lyrics when I'm trying to read or think about stuff. And so usually first thing in the morning, I'm reading scripture or I'm reading posts or this, that, and the other, and I'm engaging with things that are happening social media wise. And I don't want lyrics. So I'm usually listening to instrumental, classical kind of, sometimes jazz, smooth jazz, kind of elevator type music, just something that's kind of in the backdrop. Like when I want to like stay awake and I'm driving down the road or whatever else, sometimes it'll be, upbeat country type music because I am a Texan. And so I've always kind of liked that, but I also like some of the, classic rock and some of the 80s and 90s music as well. I mean, I'm not one of those, only thing I don't really like, somebody puts it on that I'll say, turn that off. Is like the hard metal screaming crap.
The stuff that Eric Hernandez likes.
Yeah, that when they're just screaming and you can't understand the words and it's just loud, that just, I'm too old for that. And so it doesn't jive with me at all. But almost every other kind of music I kind of get into and I'm fine with, as long as it's not just, pure trash or something like that, obviously. But
but you're mostly listening to upbeat country or 80s, 90s rock.
Something like that usually what's on. Even the oldies. My dad was a big oldies guy, just like the old Elvis stuff and the old just Bee Gees and all the other stuff. And so I grew up kind of listening to that in the background. Darius Rucker, more current, the family kind of songs.
Rudy and the Blowfish guy, right?
Yeah. Just kind of like the family, blue jeans and flags and patriotic and stuff. I played those to
dad music, just
dad music. Yeah, because I would make videos for my kids growing up back when we had camcorders, and so I would what we called the Bubba videos because my two oldest were boys. And then we just stuck with Bubba videos is what we called them. And it was just videos of them growing up. And then later Esther was added to the mix, but we still called them Bubba videos, where it's just videos of them. And then I'd put it to music. And a lot of times it was those, family fun song kind of things that I'd put to it. And so those are the favorite songs, some of my kids' favorite songs now, because they remember growing up and watching themselves, growing up with these songs in the background. And so that feel good kind of music is stuff I still love and still listen to. Kind of have it on my favorites list that'll play every once in a while, and it's nostalgic, thinking about things as they grew up. And so sometimes, I'm a baby when it comes to, I remember, songs like Butterfly Kisses, if you remember, or Wayne Watson's, Colored Ponies, that, I can't remember the exact names, or people know what I'm talking about, Wayne Watson, and Michael W. Smith, some of these Christian artists that would have these songs.
Know, if they'll know that one. I'm old and I won't even know. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm an old man.
People that listen to only Christian music will definitely know what I'm talking about. Some of those are teary-eyed, tearjerker types, nostalgic type. Especially when you have a daughter. And the Butterfly Kisses type songs, Brown Eyed Girl, or these kinds of little songs that that's classic.
Yeah. But like
classic
Christian
stuff.
Music. I mean, I only know one Michael W. that Friends song.
Oh it's another favorite. I love that.
Yeah. Well, that's my favorite too. It's the only one I know. But
well, I grew up listening to Stephen Curtis Chapman and Michael W. Smith, Amy Grant, and all the big name.
Yeah, the summer church camp, the super summer church camp music.
Yeah, well, my
Big
dad was,
and all that other stuff.
Yeah, my dad was instrumental in, in kind of giving the start for Chris Tomlin, for example, and I can only imagine, that whole group, that kind of wrote. Yeah, that rose up during that time.
I saw a movie about that, but I still can't remember the band.
Yeah, well, all that whole group kind of was a part of my world. I remember Stephen Curtis Chapman coming to the Youth Evangelism Conference that my dad was heading up, and he was a teenager at the time, or maybe early 20s, and he got on stage and played like 3 songs, and the crowd's like 20,000 students in a Union Arena, and they're just going nuts. And so he comes off the stage and they're doing some kind of a commercial thing. And my dad looks over at Stephen Curtis Chapman and is like, "Can you go back up? They want more, He goes, "That's all the songs I have." And of course, anybody knows Stephen Curtis Chapman. He has thousands of songs now, obviously. Yeah. But he's like, well, just go back up and play play one of them again. And so they put him back up there. And Chris Tomlin, same way. He was just a high school student. I remember playing basketball, pick up basketball with him at one of the super summer, rec times. And we wrote stupid little goofy songs together. And
you were a musician.
Well, he was writing the songs. We were kind of throwing in lyrics at him, and some of them are kind of embarrassing now and thinking back at it. But Chris Tomlin was a good friend and kind of a no name back in the day. Even Crowder started with
any of
Texas.
These guys take your phone call? That's the question, though.
Oh yeah, well yeah, I think they would definitely for my dad they would. Definitely for my dad they would. So if it say, "Hey, this is Chuck's son," for a long time I was Chuck's son, my dad, and so they might take a call for me. But and Mercy Me and that whole crew was great friends with my dad, and they even sent my dad their golden records and some of the stuff that he has in his office even to this day from all the success they had.
I never got into CCM.
Yeah.
I never did. When I wanted to Christian music back in those days, 90s, it was like there was a record label called Tooth and Nail, and that was like the coolest Christian label that had all the hard rock metal stuff. And I know you're not a fan of the harder stuff, but those were the bands that I listened to when I listened to Christian music, which was almost never, and still to this day, almost never. But that's pretty cool. You get to meet all of those people. And it wanted me to, and I do this to Braxton, not anymore, but I used to do this to Braxton, but I've never had a chance to do this to you because I know people think about it when they hear your story, they hear about all the things that your dad did. Did anyone ever throw the big N word at you, the nepotism word?
I think I was more concerned about it than, like I suspected that, like I thought that maybe there was nepotism, or that they only hired me because of who my dad is, or this, that, and the other, and it was only through kind of talking to people and learning that the reason I got hired, for example, was because of these other things I was doing that I wasn't even aware was being noticed by some of the people within Texas Baptist world. And so I definitely give my dad credit for getting me into certain doors that I probably wouldn't have known of otherwise. Yeah. Just like I think Sean McDowell, his dad and all that he did. But Sean is very, very talented and has taken his father's apologetic ministries to another level in so many ways. And Sean's a friend. We went to Israel together, and same kind of a thing with him and his dad. Josh McDowell is obviously very well known in Christian circles. Braxton, as you mentioned, his dad, very, very well known in Christian circles.
Yeah, his dad was the president before Braxton.
Right.
But I mean, when you know people, I think that you would probably think about it more than anyone else thought about it. Are they thinking?
Which is kind of like this.
Like are they thinking I'm here because of them?
Right. Yeah. And so you're always kind of like trying to, and there's a part of you that's kind of trying to prove yourself. Like you're trying to say, I'm not just here because my dad was in this position, or I'm not just, doing this because of my dad, but I have a calling in my life. And so a lot of people don't know this, but in my dad, when he was in his mid 50s, close to where I'm getting now, I just turned 50. He started having some neurology issues and losing feeling in his legs, had to go to a wheelchair kind of a situation and a cane. He's actually doing better now than he was back in those days because he found some ways to, to manage his health. But he had to take early medical retirement in his mid 50s. And by that time, that's right when I was graduating and getting involved in ministry and speaking, being asked to speak at different youth events in different places. And so I was filling in for my dad a lot because the youth evangelism director for Texas Baptist is often invited to go speak to here or there. And he would say, hey, son, can you go fill in for me? Or that he would recommend me to go in his place to different places because I loved traveling and didn't mind doing it. And I was doing the MC work for the Youth Evangelism Conference and kind of helping with that because he didn't really want to be on stage. And so he would put me in those spots. And so that gave me a platform to kind of learn speaking in public, and you're standing in front of, 20,000, teenagers, for every year at the Youth Evangelism Conference and at Super Summers, introducing people, even being a speaker, a preacher at Super Summer on a couple of occasions. All those kinds of things just gave me kind of that, that taste of that world and being involved with it. And so I definitely see there's a value, obviously, in being Chuck's son and all that was involved with that. But my dad was always real gracious about that. He never pushed it upon me. I never felt pressure to go that direction. It just kind of organically happened that way. And then once he took official retirement, I already knew his boss at the time, and the people, his coworkers, were all on first name basis. I knew them already, so it was kind of a natural transition. And they asked me to step into that position, which I was very grateful for, and still am. And got to spend good 20 years there, a part of Texas Baptist, and something I have great fond memories of my work there.
Well, one of the things that I told Braxton, if anyone ever said that, or one of the things you can always tell people is this: for most of human history, most men did what their dads did.
Oh yeah.
For most of human history, it is only just modern conveniences that allow us to move to a different city, to take a different job, go to college somewhere, and then never return back home and follow our own dreams and all that stuff. No, for most of human history, most men would just go into the trade that they would learn very young and follow their parents. And I think if we had more of that instead of less, the world might right itself a little bit more. I could tell you, as much as I love what I do, my dad could not get a CPA out of any of his three sons. I didn't want a piece of it. My brother, neither one of my brothers did. So he roped my wife into his thing because he couldn't get me into it. But I look back now and I was like, I look at what he was making, all the way up to his death, like in the mid 2000s, versus what I'm making in 2024, even granting inflation. I think, there was something to that accounting thing, because my wife had
the wrong field.
Yeah, my wife had always made more money than me, whether I was a barber or doing this. Is like, there's something. So maybe follow your. It's not as bad as you think to do what your dad did, and to take I would, if my dad was in ministry and did something, I would find every possible angle to exploit for my own career. But guys like you and Braxton, y'all were able to kind of prove your skill sets to everyone else, to where that they saw the value in having you around.
Well, when I was first offered the job, I actually wrote up an email. I never sent it, thankfully, that declined it because I really didn't see myself as being qualified to do what my dad was doing, because my dad's a very different personality. Like I already mentioned, he's not the theology, speaker type. He didn't really like to go preach. He wanted to be behind the scenes. He was an organizer, planner. Still to this day, he doesn't like doing the stage stuff. He's always very good at the stage stuff, but for whatever reason, he just get really nervous about it and just didn't like it. And he would always rather defer to me to do it. And I love that stuff. And so I actually typed up the email to his boss, who was offering me the job at the time, saying, I just don't know that I would fit this position because I'm nothing like my dad. Yeah. And I ended up talking to my dad and my mom about it, and talking to my wife, and talking to my dad's supervisor, and them just telling me that, the skill sets that I did have were different, but they could be supplemented. You get other people who are organizers and planners working alongside you. And some of the things where your dad didn't thrive in or didn't want to do, you'll be able to thrive in those areas. And so it was just we have a different personality and different skill sets, but at the same time, it seemed to work for us and open up other avenues of ministry that I wasn't even expecting, like the podcast world and those kinds of things.
Yeah. So, I mean, how long had you been with Texas Baptist before the Soteriology 101 thing came around?
Well, I started Texas Baptist in 2003, and I didn't start the podcast until the end of 2014.
Yeah.
So, 11 plus years, before I even got into the podcast world.
Now, you talked before about how you saw a need for the soteriology because everything was just, every time you Google something for, what about this verse? What about that verse? Explain to me this, anything. It was just constant Calvinist glut. Calvinism dominated the entire internet. And if you weren't a Calvinist, you would never encounter such things. So, I mean, that was your reason, right?
Yeah, well, it was I was teaching a course at Dallas Baptist at the time on theology, just general theology. And one of the sections was soteriology, which I had one of those dual courses where it was in class one day and then webinar the next day. And so there was recorded material as well. And we get to the soteriology section, and I happened to be getting my doctorate degree at the same time at New Orleans when all this is happening, just started it. And so I was actually writing on the topic of soteriology. And so I presented some of that stuff during that section of the material to the students. And it was like you just lit a spark under their seats because all of them start asking questions and all of them have opinions and there's debates breaking out in the middle of the class. The Village, Matt Chandler's church, is right there real close. And so a lot of the students are very influenced by Calvinism. And so there was several students in the room defending Calvinism and the other side. And I was trying to handle it more from an objective vantage point of saying, well, here are the various positions. And I finally had to get to the point, guys, I've got other material we've got to cover. We've got to move on. As much as I would love to keep talking about this, this class is not a one-string banjo. We've got the full curriculum to cover. But I told them, I said, now I'm working on some stuff for my dissertation, and I said I can make it available on the webinar for those that want to dive into this more. And so that's what I did. I just recorded on the webinar some extra stuff on soteriology for them to engage. And what I noticed was as the professor, you can see every student who watches whatever, and this wasn't even a part of the required course. And I noticed that every student, I think except for maybe one, watched my stuff on soteriology, and the comment section underneath that video was just forever long. I mean, the other videos, maybe one or two comments of like one question or this or that. The rest, but the one for soteriology was like this pages and pages of debate and discussion. And I'm like going, oh my gosh, this is crazy how these students are just
something with this.
Yeah, they're latching onto this. Well, and I, to the credit of one student, I remember the student's name. I'd come to class the next time, and he said, I really enjoyed. He just went on and on about the video, and he said that really helped me. And he said, you should do a podcast. And I was like, what's that? I wasn't even into podcasting at the time. I'd never listened to podcasts. I didn't know how do you do that? And he was like, oh, you just take the videos that you did. And he said, you recorded those. And so they're recorded. And if you download them, you can upload them on iTunes. And there's a thing called Libsyn, he said, where they'll automatically, and I was like, what? He said, you YouTube it. You can figure out how to do it. And so that just kind of stuck in my mind. And it wasn't until months later, I think, that it kind of came to fruition. But I just watching YouTube videos and talking to people and figuring out and buying about a $30 mic off of Amazon, I think, and just try to figure this stuff out. And that's kind of how I launched it. Yeah, just an audio only, audio only kind of a broadcast. And I honestly thought it, like I said, at first it was just material for my class, and then I put it out there to think, okay, this will kind of give answers to people who are kind of struggling with what Calvinism says. And I've said maybe, a couple hundred people might download and listen to it, and great if it's there. And I'll put maybe 10 videos or 10 audios out there and just kind of leave them and have a little package thing, maybe, make it available or something. I was not expect. That's why it's called Soteriology 101. People think you sat around and thought about that and came up with it. That was the name of the class for that section was soteriology is basic salvation. So I wasn't trying to be creative or anything. It was like the least creative thing in the world. It was like, this is the name of the course that I was teaching. And so that's kind of how it started.
Yeah. so you didn't set out to be a podcaster. It's like, I need a secondary income. There's all these other people doing this, so maybe I could get it. For you, it was just, hey, you should do that, and then you had to go learn the entire thing, right?
Yeah, and it was just watching videos. Matter of fact, it was years in before I even opened up like the Patreon or made it any kind of a source of ministry for me. It was more of just a side hobby and something, a labor of love. I remember getting an email from somebody saying, hey, I want to support what you're doing. You know, you should consider opening a Patreon page or something like that. And I was like, what's that?
Yeah.
You know,
So
I have no idea what
everyone
you're talking
else
about.
taught you how to do it. Like everyone, you learned everything you should do as a podcaster from other people saying, well, check
YouTube.
out Patreon, check out YouTube, check out this.
Same kind of a thing. We were doing audio only, and somebody said you should go and start doing this on YouTube. And I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't have a video. I mean, I can't, I just, what would I do? I don't know how to do that. And it just kind of stick in the back of my mind. And then I would mull it over for a month or two. And then I'd watch a video or two on YouTube on how to do videos. And I'd be like, okay, well, maybe I can try that. And if for a while, if many people go back, you'll see there was a lady who was a big supporter and listened to all of my podcasts. And she took my recordings and put my face on a video and played the audios on YouTube. That was my YouTube, first connection was on her page.
You had to stare at Leighton for an hour.
Yeah, my face and then hear my audio. And so, and her views she was getting quite a few views. And so I kind of made me think, well, maybe I need to branch out and start doing YouTube stuff. And that's become the more predominant, venue now. Than I have Lips and iTunes. Those kinds of things are still quite a few subscribers. Matter of fact, I hear from it because Caleb is one that, takes our videos and condenses them down to audio and puts them on the iTunes. And if he misses a week or if he, gets behind or whatever else, I'll still get messages occasionally.
Yeah,
like,
I get that.
Where is it on the audio?
Right.
Where's the audio?
Because that's actually my job, because I do so little for Trinity Radio that I'm trying to do more. That's the BRG and this kind of things that interest me. Yeah. But I'm responsible for getting the audio up. And I can't believe that people still do that. And one, why aren't you watching the video and giving me clicks? but yeah, I mean, two, why are you?
Well, I think that especially before YouTube had the background play, because your phone would run out of battery watching a YouTube video. And you couldn't listen to it with the phone off like you can now, but you have to have a subscription even to have that. Yeah. So I'd get people who would complain because, well, I don't want to lose my phone battery, and I want to listen to what you're saying, and I don't want to watch the screen. I just want to listen to it. And unless I have a subscription, I can't do that in the background and so I depend upon the audio coming out on podcasts. And so some people just prefer audio and never even watch the videos.
I guess because I have a YouTube thing. Like if I ever decide to, and to be fair, I have listened to a few of your videos, even though I tell you I never do. But I do that. But I guess it's because I have the YouTube Plus or Premium or whatever. Because I never watch. I always listen. Even
and double speed, right? I always listen double speed when I listen to you guys on Trinity Radio. I always listen to everything double speed.
I know that you can. I'm tempted to go get all these plugins that other people are talking about to listen to, because maybe I'd listen to more if it didn't take so much of my life. Like if I could get that.
Well, you don't need a plugin to do double speed on YouTube.
No, not double speed. I'm talking these people that get the plugin to do like triple speed. And
no.
Yeah, I can do that. I can listen to it fast. My wife hates it when I do that.
Much. Yeah. Over two is too much for me. I like to. I can't go that fast.
Well, do you like podcasting?
Yeah, no, I've enjoyed. I've enjoyed doing the broadcast. Interviews like this are fun for me. I feel like I'm just hanging out with a buddy talking. And then interviews, I get a lot of invitations for interviews for people who have their own broadcasts that want to interview me about sociology or whatever topic they're bringing me on. Some of them Calvinist guys. Matter of fact, just a few days ago, at interview with the Happy Calvinist, and on his broadcast. And there's Keith Fauske, who's another Calvinist friend of mine, who had me on his program not long ago, and a really I think profitable discussion. Our discussion the other day on Trinity Radio with Tim Barber. I think, and I agree with what someone said on Twitter, that was much more informative in understanding the differences between classical theism and the dynamic perspective than the debates that I've seen on that topic were.
Well,
because I think we were able to dive a lot deeper into
yeah,
the
the
issues.
debates are not set up for that though. You know, that's I
Yeah.
mean, I understand people saying that, but at the same time, a debate is different than a discussion, even from various perspectives that don't agree with one another. In a
Absolutely.
discussion, and if especially if you're not trying to always get a zinger in, you know, because it's not a
Yeah.
competition here. You really get to hear people flesh things out. Because me, I'm more interested in why do they think what they think, and I'm willing to think about it and consider it without, you know, and I may not accept it myself, but I'm more interested in that because you know we don't have time to read. I don't go off the deep end and read all of if I don't agree with the position. I don't go read everything that you know my opponent's
Opponent.
going to because I'm not. It's not a debate, right? Like
Right.
if I'm just, but if I'm not debating an issue, then I don't care what that
Well,
camp thinks that much. I
what,
mean, I'll
what,
read the basics, but then I won't ever deep dive. But if I'm talking to somebody who has read all of their own literature, they've
yeah.
already done the deeper dive than I'm ever going to go because I just don't have the time to learn everything about everything. So a guy like Tim and Warren McGrew and Brian White, some of these open theists, you know, I don't freak out about open theism like a lot of Calvinists do, but they've obviously read a lot more about it than I have, and they thought about it a
Right.
lot longer because I don't agree with it. So I like having conversations with them, not to argue with them, but just, why do you believe what you believe?
Well, and the best thing about those discussions is you and Braxton aren't every third word appealing to incredulity. You know, this, oh my gosh, he just thinks God's shocked off his throne, and
Yeah.
oh wow, just can you believe this guy holds to this position? Oh, blah blah, just this, and it just stifles the discussion. And to have any kind of a reasonable, back and forth to understand where the other person is. And unfortunately, that's what some, not all, debates kind of turn into, that kind of just one-upsmanship. And like I said, the appeal to incredulity, how dare you, hold to this view or believe this, and just shaming their opponent or strawmanning their opponent to make them sound as goofy as possible. And that goes both directions, by the way. I'm
Yeah.
not just blaming the Calvinists for that, because it can happen both ways. But it does become, and to me at least, it becomes tiresome. And having those kinds of discussions, with friendly discussions, where you're genuinely, like, watching you and Braxton engage with Tim Barber was really informative to me, because I saw friendly banter of, like, pushing back. Oh, well, I see what
Yeah.
you're saying there, but what about this? That to me goes so much further than even watching
Yeah,
a lot of the
especially for
debates.
people who are wanting to learn more about all of this stuff, you know.
Right.
Because
Right.
I mean, as a professor, you know, and you're a professor, you always think, is anyone going to learn anything from this, or is this
Right.
just, or is this just a blood sport? Is it just entertainment for theology geeks? And there's a place for that. Don't get me wrong, I love it, but I don't think it's as useful, and I think that we could probably do with a lot less, because now it just spills over into everyone's aspect of life, to where I notice that you have people that I'd otherwise think are decent people. They call you a one string banjo, and yet the only thing they ever do is hound your Twitter account, plucking the same string on their own instrument, you know? And I'm
Yeah.
like, you can't call him a one string banjo. And then the only thing you ever is, then Leighton Flowers is the only string on your banjo. Like, that's all your tweets are in his replies, or you're quote tweeting him or something. And it's so ridiculous. I'm like, you think why are you spending all this time being divisive? Well, you're being divisive. Look at you, always
Yeah.
dunking on him and
Well,
his
and
followers.
I think people lose sight of the fact that when you create a website for a particular purpose, like it's focused on a particular topic for a reason.
Yeah.
And I kept it separate from my evangelism and apologetic ministries, because I know it's a very popular topic that gets very divisive, and it's in-house. It's an intramural discussion among Christians. You don't necessarily want that overrunning and dominating a page on apologetics and evangelism and other things that you're wanting to work on. You want to keep it in its right place.
Right.
And so to have a particular site that's geared to and talking about a particular hot button topic, there's nothing wrong with that. The only thing that it can produce is, in the minds of people who only know you through that site, is, oh, this idea, well, Leighton is the soteriology guy, and that's all he does. And that's kind of, I've used analogies of, that's kind of like, you know, accusing your grandmother because she's a member of the crochet page on her, you know, Facebook group, that only thing she ever does is crochet. Or the football fan, only thing he ever does is talk about, you know, Cowboys football, because you go to his football page about Cowboys football and you accuse him, is this all you ever talk about? You know, carrying pigskins across a goal line. Is this all you care about? Well, on this page, yeah, because it's dedicated to that particular topic. And so I don't know how to get that across to people sometimes.
I don't either. A few more questions before we wrap up. Does the hate bother you?
Not, I mean, the goofy fun stuff I get a kick out of. I'm kind of like you. You made a comment of when you get a meme made about you, and even if it made you, you know, at your expense, so to speak, you would just love it and you'd revel in it and you would put it up on your Facebook page as your image.
Yeah, if it's good, I appreciate it. I'm like,
I'm kind of like that. I think those are funny. Like there was one, you know, the knight in that one movie that has all of his arms cut off and his legs cut off. And he's like, that's a flesh wound, you know, kind of a thing. You know, one Calvinist put my face on that with James White holding the sword. I thought that was funny. I thought, you know, I retweeted it and said, hey, that was a good one. And there's just, you know, goofy little fun things like that I get a kick out of, and I'll give them as much as I take them. What's funny is sometimes some people can't take it as well as others. And so you throw out a little funny meme or a little funny picture and you think you're going to get laughs out of it. And you get laughs from people who have a sense of humor, but then you get, you know, rebukes
they think
from people
you're the bad guy. See, Leighton Flowers is the jerk. Calvinists aren't jerks. Leighton's the jerk.
So, people take themselves way too seriously.
I agree.
And I think that if they can lighten up a little bit and laugh about things and joke about themselves, you know, you guys get on to me about mispronouncing words. I think that's hilarious because I do. But long before I started podcasting, my wife and kids would correct little things. I would say, "What are you saying? How are you pronouncing that word?" That's just a part of who I am. I'll mispronounce words, and I think I'm pronouncing them right in my head. And then it's only after I listen back to it going, I can't believe I was saying things like that. I think are funny.
But the hate never gets to you, though. You never take it personally.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes maybe early in the process, you know, people questioning my salvation, or you know, there were some harsh kinds of things that were said that were a lot more personal, and not based upon facts, but based upon, you know, just this kind of vitriol and hatred that sometimes would get to me. There's a part of me that wants people to understand where I'm coming from. And there's a part of me when I see somebody making a post where it's obvious they don't have a clue as to what I really believe, that I'll feel like this righteous indignation of trying to defend that and say, no, what you're thinking, I know what you're thinking because I used to think that way about my view. And I know how you're categorizing it and why you're categorizing it that way. And there's a part of me that wants people to understand the truth. So at least if they reject, I'm like Chris Date, for example, and some of these other, you know, that I've already mentioned, that I know disagree with me, who are Calvinists, and I know they can articulate my view correctly and they can represent my view, but they still disagree with me. That doesn't really bother me that much because I know at least they get where I'm coming from. It's the guys that you can tell they still have absolutely no clue what they're talking about with regard to what I believe, and they're still disagreeing. And if they can't say I understand before they say I disagree, that bugs me to death because I'm like, I want you to get it first. If you still disagree with me after you get it, okay, but I want you to get it first. And there's so many Calvinists, I think, who remain in their Calvinism who still haven't got it. Even James White, as smart as a guy he is, there's still things he said in the last debate that makes me think he does not get it. He does not understand where we're coming from. And it's either purposeful, like he's doing it on purpose, or he still has not taken the time to study the opposition well enough to get what we're saying. And that gets frustrating at times. And so sometimes that frustration comes out as being, you know, obsessive or like, hey, man, I've got to make sure you understand this. You've got to see this. But it's really, that's just built in my DNA. I think I just want people to really understand a perspective. I want people to understand
Leighton just wants to be
get it.
heard, y'all.
Exactly.
Just wants
We
to be
all
heard.
want to be heard for sure.
All right. So a couple of quick questions. Braxton and I are coming over to your house. You're cooking dinner. What are you cooking?
I'm taking you to a restaurant. Is what I would be doing.
No, come on. You don't have a special dish that you can make?
I can put a factor meal in the refrigerator and take it out of the refrigerator and put it in the microwave and put 2:15 on the time and push start.
Wow,
that would be the closest to home cooked meal you're going to get from me.
Really?
I mean, I can cook.
You can't even grill?
I can cook eggs on the grill. I mean, both my brothers, my son was commenting on this at our 4th of July thing, is both of my brothers on their nights, because each one of us, the 3 brothers, had a night. Yeah. And on our night, we, my wife and I, and our family does baked potatoes in the oven. And on their nights, they do like brisket, grill, this, because they're big grillers. I just never, just never got into grilling and cooking. I mean, like I said, I can microwave stuff. No, my dad was never a big cook. And I guess I took after my dad in that regard. My mom is the cook of the family.
But you didn't get it by osmosis by living in Texas. To be a man, I have to grill this beef.
No, and I've obviously, we have, even the grill that we have is one of those, I think they're called Webster's, maybe, I can't remember the name of it, but it's one of those grills, a convection grill, where you put it on there and you give it 20 minutes and you come back and it's done. It's not one of those you stand over the top of and you're sitting there flipping things. I wouldn't want to be standing in front of a hot.
What you're saying is,
you call it that if you like, but it's easy. That's what
I will like it. You grill like a woman.
But there is a benefit of that kind of a grill, is that it doesn't get, all the juices aren't cooked out of it. So it's actually, it cooks a really good steak or a really good burger.
I mean, I like ribs in a pressure cooker too, but I mean, like I don't grill the best steak in the world. I still try though, because it's like, I can do burgers. Steaks are a little bit trickier. I mean, because I don't like to overcook my steaks, but I don't want to undercook them, because
I just can't. I've never understood why someone would want to stand in front, and especially in Texas when it's already 100+ degrees, in front of a hot grill with the smoke billowing up in their face.
Because it's Texas. When in Texas, what are you supposed to do?
Flipping burger. I just is like,
you are a disgrace to your people, my friend. All right, so you're not cooking us anything if we come to your house.
I'm taking you to a restaurant.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
So, last question. I was going to bug you about this. What's your fitness routine currently?
Well, my fitness routine of choice is walking. I love to just walk, and I usually listen to podcasts when I do so, and so that's kind of my motivation.
That road country you love, right?
Right, but my problem is during the summer, especially August in Texas, is the 107 degrees, and so even if you get up at 6 a.m., it's 81 degrees outside, and so it's immediate just sweat, and I hate that, and so that often hurts my normal routines, because I get so overwhelmed with the heat that I just don't want to go out, and so then it's incumbent upon me to go to the treadmill kind of a situation, and I've just never enjoyed treadmills much. And so that's when I'll often put on the weight, is during the summers, whenever I can't walk, because when the weather's mild, I love walking. I love just putting on my Hoka shoes and just taking off. But
you're not hitting the weights in the gym or anything.
Occasionally, yeah, about on average, I'll go to the weight room about twice a week, if I'm being good, but I don't do a lot. And that's probably just lack of motivation. I'll just do a few reps here and there of, the major muscle groups, especially my back, because I went through a stage in my early 40s where I had just chronic lower back pain, and went to the doctor and all this stuff. And he said, it's just being too much in a chair. You're not moving enough. And I went to a physical therapist, and they took me through some certain exercises that, if you do this on a regular basis, your back's going to keep firm enough, and your muscles in front, and you won't have that kind of pain if you're doing this regularly.
Right.
So I do those things not to try to, look like you, Superman, but to try to just not be in pain. So my motivation for staying healthy is I don't want to be in
not
pain.
to be like me. I remember Eric Hernandez challenged you to curl 50s.
Yeah.
For a set of 10, and you did it.
Yeah.
Just
No,
like
I was surprised. I didn't know I could until he challenged me to it.
You're
And I
like,
went to the
I'm
gym.
all right with the 50s. And you start, and so I grabbed the 50s, and I'd been working out for a couple of years at that point, and I grabbed the 50s and got about a rep and a half. And I was like, dang, Flowers off the bench. No warm up, can curl 50s.
Well, I'm 6'4" and 240 pounds. Yeah. So, I mean, in order just to push myself out of bed, I've got to be able to, I've got to have, you know what I mean? I've got to have some arm muscles.
Fair
and
enough.
I did lift a lot in high school and in college. And so I've still got residual muscle. And so I just don't do it enough on a regular basis to stay, stay strong and big like I once was. But when you start with a 6'4" frame, and a big body, I mean, it's easier for me to lift more than somebody else in certain aspects.
Yeah.
Now, I've never been like bench pressing because my long monkey arms are so long. Getting that bench press up, I've always been able to do a lot more on curls and those kinds of weights, and I compete with all the buddies in football on those kinds of weights. But I could never compete with them on the
bench press. It's not like Eric Hernandez, who's big barrel chest and short stubby arms. He moves that bar 300 pounds, but he's only moving at 2.5 inches because he's locked out. Whereas you have to go a mile with those.
It feels like it. Yeah. So there's certain kinds of weights and lifting that make me feel better about myself than others. And bench press has never been.
Well, I'm going to challenge you to go at least 3 times a week, because now that you are 50, it's more important than ever. And so I'm going to give you that lecture. But
we talked about. I just saw Warren McGrew, the idol killer guy, who's a friend of ours, mutual friend of ours, and he's starting on September 1st. He calls the carnivore diet, which is basically just low carb kind of a diet. And so I was planning on starting what was called a keto diet based upon some stuff I've been reading, which is basically the same thing. It's basically low carb, no sugars kind of things. And so we're both going to be starting that on September 1st. And so maybe you can help hold us accountable since you're the fitness guru.
Yeah, I will hold both of y'all, because I've been on him quite a bit, because I mean, I'm like, dude, every time I see you, your face is filling more of the screen than it used to. You've got to do something about it, because
he and I are built very same. I mean, he's a tall guy too, and but we both have dad bods. And when we were eating, we were putting away the barbecue.
I bet you were.
And so we were like, this is one of our last, weeks to really, really veg out. So do what we want. Yeah. But we were thinking about doing a broadcast together or something, maybe starting September 1st to kick off our ditch the dad bod diet and
get Braxton in on this. This is perfect, because he'll never listen to me, but he respects y'all. So y'all need to get Braxton in on this and say, I have nothing to do with it. Pritchett's not involved. He's not. Just leave me out of it. But say, Braxton, we love you. We want you to do this with us, because we all
ditch the dad bod.
Y'all should do that. Y'all should make it public so that you'll have to stick to it instead of,
Well, my biggest problem is that because I'm tall, and I guess this is not a problem, but it's like.
I'm 5'8". It's not a problem. Quit complaining.
Well, when some guys get big, and you were this way, it was all like right here, like you look like you're pregnant. You've got a big old belly.
Yes.
My fat distributes kind of all over my body. And so I won't even notice I'm getting that fat. Now I can see it in my face. As you mentioned, your face starts filling the screen more. When you start putting on weight. But it won't be until I step on the scale and I go, oh my gosh, I just put on 40 pounds without recognizing it, because it adds on really fast.
One of the things I had to do to hold myself accountable was take that before pic. You've seen that before pic, whereas just I looked I had a cheeseburger in the oven, it's like a cheeseburger baby on its way. And I took that pic because I was like, and if you want to see what I look like, go to Theology Geek Fitness, one of the earliest videos. I post that picture of my before and after. And I wasn't, if I walked around with my shirt off, ain't no woman getting tempted to stumble because of me, It's always when I took a picture after that, people were like, there's a couple of guys in our group that's like, what if you cause some of the stuff? It's like the only people who care are dudes. They're like, all the dudes are like, yeah, way to go. Girls don't care. But I mean,
no, girls, yeah, especially like our wives, they don't care about that stuff as much as and I'm sure they appreciate it if we do get in shape. But but at the same time, it's women are just different than guys. Guys are impressed by other guys who have the discipline. And when I saw, for example, when I saw that from you, I was like, oh, if he can do that, then maybe that's something I can do. And so it's a motivator of like, oh, okay, if that guy can go from beer belly, big old beer belly to rock hard abs. And no matter how many months did it take you? I mean, you did it pretty fast.
Yeah. The reason why though is because I hate diet. I hate to diet. And once you get to a certain level of fitness to where you're constantly working out and all of that, you can actually up your calories because you're burning more. Right. But I hate to diet, but you've got to do it. You got to get below a certain amount of calories. Just, you have to get your activity levels to a certain amount in order to start coming off. Well, since I hate it so much, either it was going to suck for a year or you could make it suck for 6 months, but it's going to suck either way. So I just went deep dive, hard, fast, get it over with, because it's never going to be fun, but you're just going to make the misery extend for however long.
Well, that was what was so dramatic for me. It was like, of course, you only see each other occasionally from distance like we are. And so I was seeing you once every month or two. And it was like you went from fat dude to rock hard abs, and like that to me. And I was like,
yeah,
what
6 months goes by quick.
Crazy.
The older you get, the more you realize time goes a lot faster than you think it does. So I was like, it was all math. How little do I need to eat? How much do I need to burn? And they have calculators for this to get this over with as soon as possible. And the earliest I could do it healthily, not looking like Tom Hanks from Castaway, was it was going to do like 2 to 2.5 pounds a week over a 6 month period. And I just mathed it out. And then I said, I'm going to do that because I hated it anyway. And you don't results. You lose like 8 or 10 pounds in the first 2 weeks. You're like, man, this is going fast. And then nothing happens for a while.
Right. You plateau.
You plateau and you have to keep breaking. Funny enough, though, at the end of that 6 months, you divide it, the 75 pounds, it comes out to about 2.5 pounds a week. You just don't lose it every week
all the time. Yeah. And that's where some people stumble is they'll be measuring the whole way, and they think that it's not working because they plateau, and then they give up because they're frustrated.
Yeah.
And learning just to weigh maybe once a week instead of every day. Yeah. And then also not basing your motivation on the weight alone, but also how your clothes are fitting and things like that. Because that was the biggest thing when I lose weight, I'd notice is like the belt, loops, tightening and then having to trade in, your fat clothes to something thinner. Yeah. And that's when you get really encouraged. And I've lost the same 40, 50 pounds dozens of times over my life. And so my biggest thing is maintaining, because once I get down to a certain level, then I loosen up again. Yeah. And like I said, because I'm tall, the fat kind of hides. And before I know it, I'm back up again. And I'm like, oh, I got to get back.
Well, there's no hiding on me. It all comes out, and I just look like, a pregnant woman with hair on his belly. So it's like, I can't do that.
There was a comedian that talks about this. He said, if fat would come onto our forehead, we'd be a lot more motivated, because it'd be like, okay, I can't see this week, and I got to get on my diet. He said, you got to have your fat. When it spreads out, you can just keep packing it on. Right. I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, but you guys got to do this. I'm gonna be looking for that video now that I know that y'all are talking about it. It's set in stone, because this video will come out soon. So be looking for the Leighton Flowers, Warren McGrew, and hopefully Braxton Hunter video on Ditch the Dad Bod, which is going to be so rough, because you got Halloween candy, and then you got Thanksgiving, and then you got
Halloween candy is not the temptation for me. Candy and chocolates, those are not the temptation. Cake, I can resist all of those things. The thing I cannot resist, that I have the biggest trouble with, is chips and salsa, and pizza pasta. Those are my weakness. And cereal, I love eating a big bowl of cereal, and so those are
You're 50. You got to stop eating cereal. That's processed foods are horrible, bad for you. Quit doing it.
I know, boss. I know.
All right, Leighton. When is one last question? When is Sanctification 101 going to come out?
I don't know yet. We're still kind of working through the process of that. I'm trying to, I was thinking about maybe the back to school kind of time and this is getting close to that, end of August, September is maybe being a good launch time, but I'm just kind of working through scheduling with some of the things going on in my personal life, as well as travel and like a good time to launch, something like that. So I'm talking to Caleb about how that would look.
Before the end of the year then?
Hopefully, yeah. Yeah, that's the hope.
And that's going to be more of the practical stuff that your dad's good at, right?
Well, yeah, just more devotional, sanctification, about growth in Christ, just some of the basics of things that I, usually like to preach about and teach on that have nothing to do with Calvinism or sociology stuff.
Are you going to be able to get your dad on a podcast for that?
That would be great. I doubt it. No, I doubt he would ever do it, but I could ask him.
You need you need to get your dad on a podcast, because a lot of people have a lot of affection for your dad. Even just if by way through you just hearing the story about see you at the pole and they're like, yeah, I know that was your dad. So yeah, I mean, I think that would be a great launch for that channel.
I think that would be. I think you're right. That would be a great interview, and getting him on camera or on stage is like pulling teeth. But especially at this stage of his life, he really doesn't like doing that kind of thing. But I might be able to twist his arm. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, enlist Ward and Hayden to help out, so you got to do this just once. All right, brother. Well, I appreciate you sitting down with us, and thanks for everyone. If you listen this long, appreciate it. Click the like button, subscribe to our channel, subscribe to Soteriology 101. Look out for Sanctification 101, and we'll see you next time. God bless.
Thanks, Jonathan.